My grandson broke my finger trying to take my family ring. It happened in my kitchen at noon. He grabbed my hand with the speed of a man who has already made up his mind, twisted it sharply, and the knuckle gave way with a quiet, terrible crunch. For a second, the pain was so intense that my face went pale, as if I were losing consciousness. Then I felt a rush of heat. "Daniel," I said, "because that's what you say to a child you love, even when he's behaving badly. Let go." "Just give it to me, Grandma," he hissed. He smelled of mint and something sour. "Mom said it was mine anyway." "Why wait?" "It's not yours today," I told him. He pinned my hand to the edge of the counter and tried again, his thumb digging into me, avoiding my gaze. I could see his jaw trembling, shaking with fear or anger or both. Outside, the engine was idling. Through the window, I caught a glimpse of a crookedly parked car and a man with a cap pulled low over his eyes. Daniel's shoulders were too tense for a simple visit. He was being rushed by someone who didn't want to come through my door. "You're hurting me," I said, even though he'd already done it. "If you'd stop struggling." His voice wavered. He squeezed, then suddenly let go, as if he'd scared himself with what he'd just done. He stepped back, hands raised, palms red with tension. I need this." The ring sat askew on my throbbing finger, the same gold band my mother had pressed into my palm the day my husband and I married. I tried to keep my voice even. "What you need doesn't start with breaking me." He glanced at the door. "They're waiting." They. How did the boy I taught to hold a pencil grow hands ready to open mine? When had we become so disconnected that he decided the only way to get through to me was to dislocate my bones? I turned to the sink and ran my hand under the cold water, mostly so I could see his reflection in the window. He didn't see me glance at the small camera on the bookshelf, the one he'd helped me install last Christmas. He didn't see me move my good hand to hold the phone closer. I noticed everything. The car, the time, the way his fingers curled when he let go. Little did he know that I had already insured the ring, drawn up paperwork for the jewelry, and talked to a lawyer about settling my estate. Love hadn't made me naive. It had made me cautious. "Sit down," I said quietly. "We'll talk before anyone leaves empty-handed." His breath caught. He froze, torn between the door and my chair. He didn't know that this conversation would be the beginning of something he couldn't control. But to explain how we ended up in the kitchen, where the ring meant more than the bone, I have to go back to the beginning. When Daniel was 6, he could never finish a puzzle without slipping the last piece into his pocket first. He liked the rush of holding the ending for ransom. We laughed, called him a negotiator, gave him quarters when he returned it. I see now how early the sparkle of winning lit him up, how quickly that sparkle can blind a boy. He was a teenager when the first lie landed on my porch. A neighbor called to say Daniel had backed my late husband's truck into their fence. Daniel stood in my doorway with a split lip and a story rehearsed to the letter. "It was a hit and run," he said. "Somebody clipped me," and took off. He held my gaze with all the courage shame could buy. I believed him for an hour. Then the neighbors sent their door cam clip. I made him apologize, pay for the fence with the money he'd been saving for a gaming console, and spend a weekend repainting the gate. He did it, jaw clenched, eyes clear, like a boy who thought consequences were a bridge, not a wall. Some bridges crack slowly. 6 months before he hurt me, my daughter Karen started using words like inheritance and fairness over coffee. She peered at my ring the way a realtor looks at a window, for light, for value, for what it would fetch. "It should stay in our branch of the family," she said once too lightly. "You know, tradition." "Tradition is not a lock on a door," I told her. "It's a promise," she said. You promised Daniel would have something of Grandpa's. I had promised Daniel many things: birthday cakes, rides to practice, my patience when he forgot the difference between a half-truth and a whole one. I had never promised him my ring. I didn't say that. I said, I promised him my time. When the sports betting apps moved from whispers to wallpapers on phones, Daniel's grades started to slide. His grandfather loved baseball, and Daniel loved that his grandfather had loved it. Loving the game turned into loving the feeling of being right. A free bet here, a parlay there, 1,000 small doors into a room that never has enough chairs. I could see him rearranging his days around the next game, the next odds, the next chance to be the one who knew. 2 weeks before my fingers snapped, the family group chat that usually shared pictures of casseroles and Lily's artwork buzzed with a different sort of energy. Karen posted a picture of a ring that looked a lot like mine, cropped too close, the edges blurred. "Is this Nana's?" she asked. A minute later, "Pretty." I clicked out of the chat and checked my front window. No one was there, but I still felt watched. That was the first day I called my attorney, Mr. Silva, and told him my gut felt crowded. He's a cautious man in his 60s with the kind of hands that have learned to hold both empathy and paperwork. "You don't need a reason to secure your own life," he said. "Just a plan." We renamed my trust, changed a few beneficiaries, added a clause that wasn't a threat so much as a boundary. Any inheritance contested in public, any attempt at coercion or fraud, would reduce that share to $1. He put the papers in front of me with a calm that steadied me. "People behave better when they can't find the shortcuts," he said. I thought of Daniel's puzzle pieces. I signed. On the morning I got hurt, Karen's car wasn't in my driveway, but Daniel's was. He came in without knocking, a habit we'd allowed when he was little, and I couldn't bear to put distance between us. He stared at the ring while I peeled apples. "You're clumsy with knives when you're upset," I told him, offering a paring blade. He waved it away. He only wanted one thing. After he let go of my hand, after I made him sit, after I dabbed the swelling with ice and swallowed back the taste of metal that comes with pain, I asked, "Who's outside?" "Just a friend." He rubbed his hands together like they were cold. It was July. "Tell your friend they can wait a long while." "I can't." He stared at the floor. "I owe money." "How much?" He said a number that made the room tilt. Not enough to send a family into ruin. Enough to invite the wrong sort of men to your mother's porch. "Who do you owe?" "Nobody you can call." He glanced up at me then, the boy flickering through the glare of the man he was pretending to be. "Nana, if I bring them the ring, it's done." "Where did you get the idea you could bring anyone my ring?" He swallowed. "Mom said it was going to be mine." I took a breath that hurt my ribs. "Someday," I said. "In her mind. Not in any paper that exists on earth." He didn't argue. He pressed his mouth into a line so thin it almost wasn't there. "Listen to me," I said. "You've already crossed one line. You won't cross another." "He won't leave," he whispered. "He said he'd come inside if I took too long." I took my phone, opened the camera app, and tilted it toward the window as if I were checking the light. The lens caught the car's plate, the shape of the driver's hat, the profile of a man who had outgrown patience. I held the frame a beat longer than necessary. "Go to the living room," I told Daniel. "Sit where the camera can see you." He knew the one. He'd installed it for me. He hesitated, then obeyed. His back looked smaller than his shoulders. I called 911. My voice, when I described an assault and a threat outside my home, sounded like it belonged to someone I wanted to be. Steady, unshakable. The dispatcher kept me talking while I gathered my insurance papers and the ring appraisal and placed them by the door. "Officers are on the way," she said. Do you want to stay on the line? No, I said. I need my hands. The cruiser turned onto my street 5 minutes later, the car outside my house sliding away with the quiet guilt of a man who knows he is known. Officer Haynes stepped into my kitchen with a slowness that calmed the air. He's in his late 50s, the kind of man who has learned to carry other people's worst days without dropping his own. He looked at my hand, then at Daniel, then at the window. Do you want to press charges? He asked softly. I want to make a report, I said, and I want this documented, every angle of it. I nodded toward the camera. He hurt me. He tried to take my ring. There's someone else involved. I intend to handle this legally. Daniel stared at the table. I didn't mean to. Intent and impact are different weather, Haynes said. Both leave you wet. I gave my statement. They photographed my hand. They took down the plates I'd captured, the make of the car. They asked if I needed an ambulance. I said I'd drive myself after I called my attorney. The officer nodded as if he'd expected that order of care. At urgent care, the doctor set my finger and gave me a bright white splint that made every mundane task an act of decision. You should rest, he said. Ice. Elevate. He paused. You want us to notify Adult Protective Services? I already notified the law, I said, and I'm not a person who needs protecting. Fair enough, he said, but allow me one note you didn't ask for. Hurt tends to repeat itself if it doesn't meet a wall. I went home and started building walls Daniel could see and the men outside could not. First I called Mr. Silva and told him to file the report with the court to record potential elder exploitation. The phrase tasted metallic in my mouth, but naming a thing gives it a place to sit. Next, I called my insurance and placed a fraud alert on the ring. Then I called my friend Oksana at the jewelry store. She is younger than me by a decade, but she learned from her father, who learned from his, and the knowledge in that family handles truth like a loop. Bring it in, she said. Let's make them think they want the wrong stone. At the shop, she examined the ring under light with a tenderness that felt like prayer. The setting is sound, she said, but let's give the world a decoy. A fake? A twin, she said, the corners of her mouth tilting up. Glass with ambition, and a little something for anyone who takes it without asking. She showed me a tiny ampule no bigger than my thumbnail. Security dye, breaks with pressure, invisible until it meets soap and water. Then it sings purple. Will it hurt him? I asked. It will embarrass him, she said. Sometimes embarrassment is a kinder teacher than fear. We set a plan. She kept my real ring for resizing to accommodate the swelling, truth, and to install a micro-engraving that would make identification unassailable, insurance. I left with the twin on my finger and a small box prepared with the dye in its lining. If anyone pried, they'd be marked for days. If anyone washed, the mark would shout. On the way home, I called my son, Jack. He's 53, carries his father's good posture and my bad habit of keeping quiet until the room requires thunder. I told him everything. He was silent for a long breath. You want me to come down there? I want you to hear me first, I said. I am not hiding. I am not running. I am not giving that boy my ring. But I am giving him a choice. What kind of choice? The kind that shows him the map he's walking without forcing him to step into a pit. You're talking like Dad, he said, and I could hear the fondness and the ache braided together. What do you need from me? I want you here on Thursday at 6, I said. We're having dinner. Karen and Daniel are invited. You'll sit and keep your temper. If a man named Pike shows up, if he's the one who's been idling outside, you'll let him talk long enough to hear what he thinks he deserves. Pike, Jack repeated, tasting the name like a lemon. And then? And then we close the door on any version of this story that ends with me frightened. Jack exhaled. I'll be there. He paused. Do you want me to call Karen? No, I said. I'll call my daughter. Karen picked up on the first ring, her voice too bright. Mom, are you okay? Daniel said you... Daniel said what? He said you slipped, that you hurt your hand trying to get a jar open. Is that what he said? I let the words sit. I have a splint. I have a police report. I have a camera silence. Then a smaller voice. I didn't know he'd do that. Didn't you? I told him the ring would be his someday, she said. And there it was. The story she'd been telling herself out loud long enough to forget it was fiction. He said he needed collateral for a loan. And you gave a picture of my hand to a man I've never met, I said. You let him plan his theft in my kitchen. I didn't... She stopped, started again. I thought it would scare him into stopping. Fear doesn't teach the lesson you think it does, I said. It only teaches a boy how to run faster. She wept then, a sound I had heard when she was 10 and the neighbor's dog bit her, when she was 27 and her marriage cracked, when she was 49 and she realized she could no longer pretend Daniel's problems would outgrow him. What do you need me to do? Come to dinner, I said. Be quiet. Be brave. We ate baked chicken and green beans because I cook, what my hands remember even when they hurt. Jack arrived early and fixed the latch on the back gate. Karen came second, her eyes swollen, her lipstick too careful. Daniel showed up last, alone, hands shoved into pockets so deep he had to lift his shoulders to keep balance. He wouldn't meet Jack's gaze. He couldn't meet mine. We ate in a clatter of fork and plate, and things unsaid. At 6:30, a car rolled to a stop outside my house and did not turn off its engine. Jack's jaw tightened. You sure? I'm sure. There was a knock. Not the knock of a neighbor or a friend. The knock of a man who thinks doors obey him. I opened it. Mrs. Hall? He asked, voice smooth, hat low, eyes washing over the room like he was reading the menu. That's me. I'm Pike. He held out a card with a number and a company name so generic it meant nothing. His hands were too pink for construction and too clean for mercy. I'm here to pick up something your grandson offered as security. This is a home, I said, not a pawn shop. We can keep this civil, he said. No need to make calls. He let the word calls curl at the edges. Good, I said, because I made mine earlier. I gestured to the table. You can say what you came to say while we finish dinner. There's cobbler cooling. He smiled with half his mouth and took a chair that let him see all the exits. I don't want trouble, he said. I want what I'm owed. You're owed nothing by me, I said. If you think you're owed by my grandson, you can discuss it in the correct venue. He spread his hands. Courts are slow. I'm efficient. Dan here said he'd bring a ring. He didn't. That puts me in a position I don't like. He looked at Daniel. You put me there, kid. Daniel's mouth worked. No sound came out. May I ask how old you are, Mr. Pike? I said. He blinked, amused. Old enough to know better than to answer a lady's questions. Old enough to know the difference between a gift and a theft? Semantics. Law, Jack said, finally letting his voice into the room. It was a low sound with edges. You're using words you don't own. Pike kept smiling. I didn't come to fence with you. He looked at me again. I came for the ring. I came to protect my grandson, I said. Those two goals don't meet. Karen's hands were shaking. She tried to fold them in her lap. They escaped, fluttering to her hair, to her throat. Please, she said to no one and everyone. I stood, walked to the hutch, and took out a small velvet box. Daniel's eyes followed it like it was a sunrise he hadn't seen in months. Pike leaned back, pleased. Jack stared at me like I had lost my mind. I set the box on the table and did not open it. "You'll sign a receipt," I said, "with your name and address. You'll write that you are temporarily holding an item you have no legal claim to, pending review by counsel. You'll include the amount you say is owed and the terms under which you intend to return the item. You'll present a copy of your license and a business card that belongs to a business, and you'll leave the moment I tell you to leave." Pike laughed. "Lady, I'm not signing anything." "Then you're not taking anything," I said. I tapped the box. "Those are the rules for anyone who touches what belongs to me." He looked at Daniel, then at Jack, calculating weight. "Open it," he said. "No," I said. He reached for the box. Jack's hand moved, flat and fast, landing on Pike's wrist with the kind of pressure you only learn from holding a life together for a long time. "Don't." Pike's smile thinned. "You think I don't know you called the cops the other day? You think I don't know they're tired and paperwork goes missing and sons don't press charges against their own? You think you scare me?" He shifted just enough to let the light catch the small bulge under his jacket. Not a gun. A phone. It vibrated. He didn't look at it. His eyes stayed on mine. "I've dealt with worse." "I haven't," I said, "and I don't intend to start." I took the box back. "Dinner's over." "You can go." Pike's chair scraped. He stood. "You'll regret this." "I don't do regrets anymore," I said. "I do records." I walked to the sideboard and pressed the small pendant button Oksana had slipped me with the dye ampule. It sent an alert to the officers stationed 3 blocks away, courtesy of Haynes, and it turned the camera in the corner to a higher resolution. The tiny red light didn't blink. It burned. Pike hesitated a second too long, then reached again, faster for the box, as if speed could substitute for permission. I let him. His fingers pinched the lid and squeezed. The ampule inside did exactly what it was made to do. It popped like a soap bubble and kissed his skin. He didn't feel it. He shoved the box into his jacket and left with a softness that told me he had never learned to close a door. He didn't know he'd carry the mark home. Haynes arrived 10 minutes later, took our statements again, and noted the time Pike had touched the box. "We'll pay him a visit," he said. "You want to sign the assault complaint tonight?" I looked at Daniel. He had gone the color of paper left in the sun. "Yes," I said. "I do." Daniel closed his eyes like the word was a light that hurt. "Against whom?" Haynes asked, though he knew. "Against the man who broke my finger," I said, "and against the man who tried to take what was mine." I looked at Daniel while I said it. "Both are true." He cried then, not like a boy, but like a man whose body is learning honesty the hard way. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't know how else to make it stop." "You make it stop by stopping," I said. "By telling the truth to people who can help. Not to men who take your fear and sell it back to you at interest." Haynes nodded. "We'll need you at the station tomorrow." He turned to Jack. "You coming with her?" "I am," Jack said. After they left, Karen tried to touch my hand and failed. "I didn't mean for any of this." "Meaning well isn't the same as doing well," I said. "You made promises with things that weren't yours to promise." "I'll fix it," she said. "You'll start by telling the truth," I said. "To yourself. First. Then to the court." That night, alone in my room, the ache in my finger pulsing in time with my heart, I took a picture of my hand. Not for proof, for memory. This is the cost, I told myself. Not of love, of pretending love can replace boundaries. The next morning we went to the station, where the fluorescent lights made everyone look like they'd been up too late deciding things. Haynes introduced us to a detective whose tie had seen better days and better choices. "I'm Morales," he said, extending a hand that felt like a bench you could sit on. "Tell me everything again." We did. He watched Daniel while I spoke, not suspicious, not kind, Just measuring. When I finished, he tapped a file. We know Pike, he said. Knows how to lean. Likes loans that look like gifts. Family collateral is his favorite. He's careful, but not as careful as your jeweler. His mouth almost smiled. We checked his place this morning. He answered the door with hands the color of bruised violets. The dye, I said. Morales said. He says he got paint on him. He says a lot of things. Doesn't say them to judges if he can help it. He turned to Daniel. You're 20, right? 19. Old enough to be charged like a man, Morales said. Old enough to be helped like one, too. Which route you take depends on what you tell me. Next. Daniel told him about the bets, about the first win that made his bones buzz, about the losses that followed like relatives at a funeral, about the night he met a guy who knew a guy who could make numbers stop shouting for a while. He told him about Karen's picture, about the words he wanted to do right by, about the moment in my kitchen when the need outgrew the person he'd been trying to be. He told the truth the way an old dog learns a new trick, with effort and a surprise of joy when it works. Morales listened like a man digging a trench for a flood that is already on the way. You'll get a court date for the assault, he said. You'll get a lawyer. You'll go to meetings your pride won't enjoy. If you skip any of that, you'll meet men whose patience doesn't include mothers. If you show up, you'll be treated like someone worth the paperwork. He turned to me. We'll press Pike. He'll push back. He'll probably call the kid again. If he does, don't answer alone. I won't, I said. Good, he said. And for what it's worth, I've seen a lot of endings. The way you started this, recording, reporting, not hiding, gives you more endings to choose from. On Friday, mister, Silva filed the amendment to my trust that had waited in his desk for the day my courage outpaced my nostalgia. We built in a clause that allowed me to change my mind back to nothing at all if safety required it. We sent copies to everyone who needed to know. Silence arrived like clean wind. On Sunday, I wore the twin to church and shook hands with a dozen people who meant well. Karen sat on my left, Lily on my right, Daniel a row behind us, like a man learning how to sit with himself. After the service, Haynes tapped my shoulder and nodded toward the lot. Pike stood across the street pretending to read a flyer. His hands were clean now. His jaw wasn't. You have a restraining order coming, Haynes said. He'll get a copy tomorrow. Good, I said. He can put it on his fridge. That afternoon, Karen came over with a cake she hadn't baked and a request that tasted like humility. Can I see the ring? She asked. I took her to the table the same way I had taken Daniel days before. I set the twin between us. She picked it up like it might bite. It's beautiful, she said, a whisper and a confession. The real one is at the bank, I said. It will stay there until I decide where it goes next. I don't know yet. What I do know is that you don't get to decide with pictures, or promises you make, to fix things you broke. She nodded, tears slow this time. I know. Do you? I softened. Then start with your son. Sit with him in rooms that smell like coffee and old carpet while he says things you wish he wouldn't. Don't rescue him from the embarrassment that builds a spine. I will, she said, if he lets me. He'll fight you, I said. Let him. Fight back with boundaries, not bargains. 2 weeks later, Daniel stood in front of a judge who had enough lines in his face to map a county. Assault in the 4th degree, the clerk read. Attempted theft. Daniel's public defender whispered. The prosecutor spoke. I spoke. I said the words I had practiced in my kitchen at midnight. Your Honor, he is my grandson. He broke my finger. He tried to take what is not his. I am asking the court to require counseling and restitution. I am asking the court to keep him away from men like Pike. And I am asking the court to let me keep loving him without pretending he didn't do what he did. The judge looked over his glasses at Daniel. You're lucky, he said, not kindly, not cruelly. You have people who refuse to lie for you. He gave Daniel 18 months of probation, mandatory counseling, a ban on betting, community service, and the kind of warning that makes a young man stand up straighter. Pike didn't appear in that courtroom. He appeared in another one a month later with hands that had learned not to reach. He pled to charges that spelled out a life that had been careful until it wasn't. He got time that would make him rethink what he called collateral. In the evenings, I taught myself to open jars with my left hand. I fixed the gate. I pruned the roses. I wrote letters to my husband that I did not send. I met with Lily's school counselor about scholarships because 13 turns into 18 the way summer turns into fall, loudly, then all at once. Daniel started coming on Wednesdays for supper, a condition of my heart more than the court. He brought groceries and stood at the stove like a penitent priest. He didn't ask about the ring. He asked about the soup. He asked about the way his grandfather had measured twice and cut once. He asked if I thought he could learn to like the quiet. Quiet is like bread, I told him. It gets better when you give it time. One night, he laid a small box on the counter. I pawned Grandpa's tools last winter, he said without looking up. I told myself it was temporary. It wasn't. I bought them back. He opened the box. Inside lay the old measuring tape and the watch with the crack across the face. They're not worth much, he said, but I wanted to return something I took. I touched the watch like a blessing. This was never about worth, I said. Will you ever trust me again? He asked. I trust you to do what you practice, I said. So practice well. He nodded, eyes bright with the kind of tears men blink into their skin. I'm trying. Trying is a verb, I said. Keep it that way. When the bank called to tell me the engraving on my real ring was complete, I drove there alone, my splint gone, my grip stronger. The manager brought me to a quiet room and set the small envelope on the table like it contained a life. Here you are, she said. We can add a note to your file if you wish. I did wish. I wrote in neat letters. This ring is a symbol, not a solution. It will be given when it can't be used to hurt. I sealed the note with a piece of tape that made the smallest sound in the world. On my way out, I passed a young couple arguing softly about credit limits and babies. The woman kept twisting her ring round and round her finger. The man kept checking his phone. I wanted to tell them to build their walls out of truth now, while their hands still knew how to hold it. I wanted to tell them a ring doesn't keep you safe. People do. At home, I made tea and sat at the table where Daniel had hurt me and apologized to me and started the long work of making both mean something. The afternoon light found the scratches in the wood from years of homework and late-night card games and one enthusiastic cat. I thought about promises and property and the way love can be both a shelter and a blade. I thought about the boy who put puzzle pieces in his pocket and the man who took them out and put them back, one by one, leaving the picture a little clearer than before. The phone rang. It was Morales. Just wanted you to know, he said. Pike took a plea. Won't be in your neighborhood for a while. Thank you, I said. For keeping your word? You did the hard part, he said. You set the terms. After I hung up, I took the twin ring off and set it next to the empty velvet box with the clean lining. I traced the edge of the box with my finger, the one that had learned its lesson. I thought about how easy it would have been to turn this into a story where I either forgave everything or locked every door. Instead, I built a path between. If they wanted to treat me like a signature, I reminded them I still hold the pen. And if you want to know how a ring became a map and a kitchen turned into a courtroom, and a boy learned the weight of his own hands, you have to remember this. I did not fight alone. I chose my witnesses. I wrote my rules. And when they looked at me like I was old enough to be ignored, I answered like a woman who has outlived their underestimation. This is how the story goes on from here. Not with fear, not with bargains, but with a list on the fridge that starts with 3 words I should have taped there years ago. Tell the truth. The rest follows.
My grandma told me this story. I have many more stories. Subscribe so you don't miss the most interesting things.